hammer comes down and beats you over the head for the rest of your life with a big national security stick. And so that people learn to duck their head and not speak up, because bad idea now.
This is the emergency broadcast system. This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test. Citizens are advised to take the following steps.
Find us, armoroftruth.net.
In the age of technocracy, scientism, and pop atheism,
Faith is resistance.
Nietzsche, of course, announced the death of God and called for the birth of the Übermensch, the Superman, who would take humanity to new heights and to create a new world order.
Find us at the Armor of Truth YouTube channel.
This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test.
Greetings, everybody. Welcome to Armor of Truth Live, number 277. Armor of Truth Live, the only internet live stream dedicated to ruining your idols. And so far, we've destroyed 276 idols, and today, it's the 277th summer. Speak on it.
Greetings.
Yeah, so that's what we're about here. Ruining idols. I read that.
We just kind of had an inside joke about that.
Yeah, I just read that somewhere yesterday. I thought that is a really good way to look at it, because that is a ministry, tearing down idols, strongholds. We're going to be talking about strongholds today. One of those strongholds is the desire to seek knowledge from the darkness, to speak into the darkness, expecting a return of knowledge or something, right? To put all your trust in the unknown rather than what you can know. Let's just dive right in and start off with this. You can see the topic: Ghostbots and spirit box. Are Christians talking to the dead? Other people. What, how has it infected? That's probably a good word. How has it affected and infected the nation and the church and all that? First of all, let's look around at what it's like out there. What are people doing? And what are people doing in the name of Jesus, for example? Let's take a look here. Let's start off with the Foreman brothers. Now, this is a trio of brothers who we love very much, right? We like these guys.
Yes, we do.
We just cannot endorse what they're up to, but we just think that there's some bad error here. Entertaining, but errant. Let's take a look for just a minute.
I truly 100% believe that there is something evil in this house. I believe that there are two children downstairs. I believe there's two children down there, but they are not the only ones. I believe there's somebody else.
Paranormal Nightmare.
Why did you keep inflicting your...
It's a pretty good example of what you get in a standard ghost hunting paranormal type show. You get the story. You'll get the storyline. Someone will give you. Let's listen to this.
Terrible things go on, whether it be paranormal, whether it be some other things. I don't want nothing to do with it. I haven't been in there in years. I won't do it. Dining room, the bathroom, definitely the basement. My experience in the house happened around the age of 17, 18, so nearly 20 years ago. I was getting ready for bed. I had laid down and it was dark. When I laid down, I happened to look down, and at the foot of my bed, I thought I saw a woman with long hair, covering most of her face, kneeling down with her arms crossed in front of her, and like she was lunging toward me.
Now, let's just make this clear right off the bat, too. We are in no way saying that these things aren't happening to these people. That's not what we're here to say. We're not discounting anyone's experience. No doubt that these things happen. How do we define them? we need to have valid categories to place things in. We need to stand on truth. Now, what we're talking about here specifically today is what the Foreman brothers do quite a bit, is talking to the entities.
I'm like freaked out. It's almost like you're afraid to talk to it. Right now we're in Westville, Illinois. This family has been experiencing some of the craziest stuff I've seen and heard. Supposedly there's 2 children in the house down in the basement. We've got cameras and alarms down there. And then a dark, dominant entity that is affecting people in a very negative way. I got a device here. If you come close to me, that'll let me know that you're here. Are you in that bedroom?
And it's always you, just you, as if there's only one.
Yeah. No royal weave.
No royal we.
You hear that clicking?
Did you say that? What?
That's evidence.
There was a male
That's
voice.
evidence in the ghost hunting world. That clicking. Let's hear a little bit more of this.
Can you tell us what your name is?
Oh shit.
There was a kid, there was a voice right before that happened.
I heard it.
There you go. There's evidence.
Holy crap. Are you setting our alarms off?
There goes the REM
You hear
pod.
the voice?
Yeah.
There goes the REM pod,
Hello?
Summer.
What about the cat?
Who are
calls?
you? It is setting that freaking thing off like crazy.
Josh, look right above it too. There's a big pipe. And that's where I heard the voice.
Can you move away from our device? Let's move out of here real quick.
All right, okay.
I got a camera on that.
Let's take. I want to get to where they're doing the spirit box stuff here. So it's usually when they're just kind of chilling and sitting down. They do it later in the show.
If there's anybody inside this house, can you make yourself known, please? Can you give me a sign of your presence? My name is Josh.
It's always good to introduce yourself, I believe. I've heard that somewhere.
Almost looks like that's moving over there. Are you moving stuff down here?
Here we get some laughing, apparently.
I'm a ghost, just like you are.
Laughing.
Why are you laughing at me? Can you see me?
Real. Agreed.
What do you keep agreeing with?
Hello.
I need to know if you're a child or not. Okay, it's getting cold in here again. That means you're in here with me.
And there you go. When it's cold, that's evidence that an entity is near you, or so it seems. Let's jump over to, let's look at another young man who we discovered. Reason we didn't discover him, we came across his YouTube channel. This is Dallin. I think it's Dallin Spratt. He has a nice YouTube channel, a big YouTube channel. And this is a video called Talking to the Dead about the afterlife. What happens when we die. This is pretty interesting. Because what we see happening all over in this movement is seeking knowledge from the unknown. People have questions and they want answers, but they don't know where to look. That's not exactly true. People do know where to look. But as Romans chapter 1 says, we have this knowledge that God exists and that God is real and He is who He says He is, but we like to suppress that knowledge because we have other ideas. We have things we'd like to do. We have beliefs that we would like to hold that don't match up with God's revelation. So let's I'll go ahead and play the intro here. We've got a couple clips here. This is a very interesting discussion here.
What's going on, Graveyard Shift family? As you can see, we have some guests today.
Taco and
we got
Tito.
Tacos, and we got Tito here. So we've actually been to this cemetery before. This is the one that Can I go to work, guys, real quick? This is the one where we brought Tito and Taco to last time. I thought it would be cool to bring them back because the spirits here are familiar with Tito and Taco. Yeah, and we've been here a few times. So I've actually been to this cemetery a few times. So I know the spirits here communicate. Everyone here is friendly. It's a smaller family plot. So yeah, I just thought they'd be way more receptive to the questions that we're going to ask.
So we're talking about here, this is not just getting information. We're talking about, he's describing a relationship. He's having a relationship with the unseen realm. Here are some questions. Here are some questions seeking advice on the afterlife.
In Lazelle, Georgia, can you hear your family talking to you even if you're not at your grave?
For those of you who may not be aware, this is a spirit box session. This is what it looks like. And just to very quickly explain what spirit box is, before we had all these apps, the spirit box is a device that scans the AM, FM, shortwave radio and frequencies, and it goes through the entire band and at a certain speed, and as it passes over a channel, a signal with audio on it, you hear just a quick clip of that channel, so you hear little bits of words. And so the spirit box generally was created to, well, ostensibly anyway, so that the spirits could use it. They could manipulate this technology in order to speak to you. They could use the bits of words, and somehow I don't really understand why anyone ever thought that this would produce coherent conversations, because it doesn't. But what it does do is it causes suggestion. It causes the power of suggestion in our minds, and people just start building out narratives. One of the most common things that you see among ghost hunters, the ones who are successful, are the ones who are able to build narratives around these seemingly non-events. That's what the Foreman brothers are good at. They're good at interviewing their clients and getting the story, and so you go into it already seated. You're already expecting to hear things. And Dallin Spratt here also, this is basically what he does. He has a loyal audience, and he meets with them from time to time or several times a week in a graveyard, because
he even travels to different locations around the country.
New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe we'll get a clip of that later. I'll see if we've got time. I want to show a clip of that where he was in New Orleans. Yeah, so this is what he does. And now this is not like EVP. Electro voice phenomenon is a different idea. That's where you're just recording onto a tape. It used to be anyway, on a magnetic tape. And you go back and listen later. You ask questions. You go back and listen later to see what sort of responses could have ended up on the tape that weren't audible in the room at the time. And it all has a lot to do with power of suggestion. Today, all of these things are all available in one app. Several different manufacturers or creators of apps, but they've got it down now to that. So let's listen to this.
Does someone have to be at your gravesite to talk to you? I said no. So, once you pass away, can your loved ones talk to you from anywhere in the world? Okay. Very sensitive. Okay. Very sensitive. So, is the conversation stronger where your physical body was laid? So are you everywhere your loved ones are?
Now, just for a clarification, the words that you see on the screen are the interpretation that he goes back and does after the fact and edits the video out and believes that this is what was being said. you probably didn't hear any of those words coming through there, right? And that's usually how it goes. So let's jump ahead here to this point here. Someone wants Dylan to ask the other side, what do you see from where you are?
Okay. It said Ed, yeah. That's who asked that question. Ed look like they on your ass, my boy. Emily from Pennsylvania says, what do you see on the other side? What do you... Magnificent? Is it beautiful on the other side? What is the most surprising thing about the other side? Did I say we're not racist? I like them. So is somebody over there on the other side not liking me?
And so you see that's how it usually goes for hours. All right, let's jump ahead here to the 13-minute mark. Here are some interesting practical questions about cremation and burial. Listen to this.
Being buried versus being cremated.
Let's just point out too, you never get unambiguous, clear answers. Not ever. And that's why it's so popular.
What happens to the people that are cremated? Do you still go to your final destination? Does it matter if you're buried or cremated? People? Respect? So is it disrespectful to cremate your body? Is it okay to cremate your body? Are you treated or judged differently if you choose cremation? Similar? That's fair. I like that question. This is from Jules from Minnesota.
Okay, that's probably a good sampling to start out with. We'll come back in just a minute. I've got some more. Some of you may remember the 80s magician comedian, the amazing Jonathan. He's passed away now, but we'll hear from his wife. I'm not sure he's his wife. Is she his wife? I think she's his wife.
Well, certainly they were together.
Partner, something very progressive. Mm-hmm. But so we'll hear from her in just a moment, because here's what you need to understand. What you believe about life, death, and the unseen realm matters a lot. Today we're going to talk about something called grief tech, grief technology, Ghostbots. There are artificial intelligence companies who are using the technology now to we'll talk about it in a minute. We'll get there. We'll show you how that they're using artificial intelligence to put people in contact with their loved ones.
I think it's kind of it's interesting to think about too, when we were looking at some of the data on beliefs of Americans. For example, we saw in USA Today a 2021 survey that was conducted by YouGov, and it's saying that about 43% of American adults say that they believe demons exist.
Yeah.
But actually the stats also say 41% said that they believe in ghosts, and 20% said that they had personally experienced them, and 11% said that they had encountered a demon. So just to think about how 41%, depending on which survey you're looking at, some surveys are higher, which you had stats that were higher in a different survey. But, right out the gate, you see that 41% believe in ghosts. So they think that they're just talking to their deceased loved ones.
Yeah, and they assume it, and they feel comfortable with it. In fact, they feel comforted by it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's the question, folks. Would you talk to the dead if you could? if you could, if you knew it was possible, and you could dial right into a dead relative, would you? Well, we want to make the case here to you tonight that it shouldn't even be a desire that you have, right? Necromancy is surprisingly popular in America right now, as communicating with the dead and seeking knowledge from spirits has become culturally acceptable. But what this preoccupation with talking to the dead signals about the modern person is not so much that we've become a progressive, open-minded culture, but rather it highlights a dangerous level of gullibility or spiritual vulnerability. And here's why. Our minds are easily shaped. And most often, our minds are shaped by the plausibility structures in our societies. That is to say that we tend to tolerate and integrate into our own belief systems ideas and beliefs that become popular in the society around us. Modern Western society is a blend of materialism and neo-pagan assumptions, all blended together into this amalgamation of modern witchcraft that we see today. American society, for example, having rejected the true and living God, has transformed itself from a once flourishing society grounded in self-evident truths to now an anxious and spiritually confused nation. Once again, what we believe about life, death, and the unseen realm really does matter. And so here we are today dealing with the reality of death and the desire to talk to our lost loved ones. Now, of course, someone may tune in and say, who are you to say that he's not talking to his grandmother or some other relative or family member? Who are you to say? Who you say it's not my mother, talking to me through the ghost box or spirit box? You should have a more open mind, Brad. That's what people would say. Well, we're not intended to operate with open minds forever. You're not supposed to have an open mind always and on all matters. The mind is not intended to remain open always. Our minds are intended to clamp down on something when it's true. We're intended to hold, to love, and spread truth. Not to say, well, that's your truth and this is my truth and that's okay because no, that's not loving. Now, otherwise, a person is going to be gullible and they'll be taken advantage of in the most intimate of ways. And I mean spiritual in that sense. Because spiritual is the most intimate of ways. When a person wishes to deny absolute truth, that person's position can be tested in many ways. And that's what we find in this quite a bit. For example, is it true that your weekly or monthly paycheck should be given to a different person who chooses not to work while you go without? Of course, that's not okay. And the Bible has you covered there, right? The worker is worthy of his wage. So there is an example of absolute truth at work in your mind right now. But if you'll notice, the only time a person chooses to argue for truth being a fluid concept is when it concerns ideas or outcomes which are favorable in some way to their personal desires or circumstances. Most of the time, a person who claims that truth is relative is going to abandon that position the instant they realize that being a relativist costs them more than they're willing to lose. When you try to steal the wallet of a relativist, very quickly they stop being relativist. As Westerners have in growing numbers rejected God in the true sense, which means the sovereign Lord, creator, and sustainer of all things, seen and unseen. We've opened the door to all personal opinions of God as being valid, therefore allowing as plausible almost any interpretation of the unseen realm, almost any interpretation of God. Why do modern people believe it possible to communicate with the dead in the first place? More importantly, why do they want to communicate with the dead? Idolatry appears just as easily in Christian communities as it does in non-Christian ones. Christians are just as susceptible to idolatry as anyone else. C.S. Lewis wrote in the Screwtape Letters, there are two equal and opposite errors we make about devils. One is to disbelieve in their existence. The other is to believe and feel an excessive and unhealthy interest in them. Both can be terribly destructive. But our culture is inescapably religious. And the current crisis is fueled by the abomination, well, not the abomination. Our current crisis is fueled by the abomination of witchcraft. But it's also fueled by the abandonment of the Christian view of the human person. The Christian view of every person as an imager of God or image bearer of God. As we've lost that, we've lost our grounding. Christians today are having artificial intelligence write sermons and lead worship. Christians are also engaging in elements of the paranormal movement as if speaking into the darkness and seeking wisdom from the darkness is somehow an acceptable practice. That's confusion. We're all exposed to it, and to some degree or another, we've all taken part in it. So here's what I want to make sure that everyone gets, if you don't hear anything else today in this message. Please heed this warning for your own good. You, we, all of us, we must take evil seriously. This world has a disordered sense of fear. They do not fear God, and they don't take evil seriously either. As Christians, we have no excuse above any others because we have the truth. We must take evil seriously, and we must warn others about it. And you also have to be on guard for this danger. Your faith is going to be used against you. Your faith will be used to make things that are evil seem like they're just okay, like it's just for fun, right? It's comforting for someone to believe they're hearing from their dead grandmother, right? That's, well, a recent Vox article. Well, these stats here too, I just thought I'd mention this. While we're here, Pew Research, we found this. This is a study from 2020 that found 61% of Christians believe in some sort of New Age idea. That means that includes things like reincarnation. And this is, this is an old standby graphic that Summer put together for us here a while back. Shows you the decline in church membership really since 1938. You can see there, church membership. People who said they were a member of a local body of believers in 1938, 1940 was around 73%, and it stayed that way. It didn't fall below 70% until the year 2000. From the year 2000 to the year 2020, it dropped from 70% to 47%. I did some math on that. As you can see on that graph, that drop from 73 to 72 to 71 to 70, it would have taken 400 years for that to get down to 47%. America did it in 20 years, really 19 years. That is a significant statistic. Also, some of the ideas that we've encountered in our work here so far, comments that we get. A couple years ago, Thomas C. sent us this message saying you don't need church. All you need is God. Okay, so what about what God said? I mean, what about what God said about whether or not you need the gathering and the body of believers? Just read Hebrews 10. Sarah J. here said these churches. Now, this is the assumption is that all organized religions, all churches, have become the church of Satan in disguise. All right, Jeremiah 51:45. We've also got this in the book of Revelation. Come out from among her, my people. Come out of her, my people. Jeremiah 51 says, save your lives, each of you, from the Lord's burning anger. So the assumption here is come out of these churches because they're the church of Satan in disguise. All of them. This is a dangerous idea because it can't be supported in Scripture to begin with. About 51%, this is interesting that Summer found here. Some, you want to talk about this one? Did you find anything else about Republicans and Democrats, what they believe?
Yeah, well, it's not a shocker. I just thought I'd pull that out of that article that 51% of Republicans believe demons are real, while 34% of Democrats agreed. So
because they're the demons. Come on now.
Dun-dun-dun.
All right.
That's yeah. So, if you want to move to the next slide.
Yeah, from USA Today. 41%.
Yeah.
Say they believe this is Americans. 41% of Americans polled. I guess is that what it is?
It is.
Believe in ghosts. 20% said they personally had an experience. Now I have data that shows it's even higher.
Right. I saw that too. 63%. It kind of depends on which poll you're looking at.
Yeah.
But that does imply quite a big number, obviously.
Yeah.
So,
even though the statistics vary a little bit from source to source, what the indication is that it's on the rise. Here's from USA Today. This is another YouGov survey.
Right. So 43% believe demons are real.
43%. Yeah. Okay. So that's all right. Well, a recent Vox article. Here's a couple more headlines to support some of these stats. Here's one from the Jerusalem Post from August 24th of this year. And that's because Pew Research put out an extensive poll with some statistics on August 23rd of this year. So right after that, there were, some articles written about it. Nearly half of Americans communicate with the dead, according to this poll. There's that stat again, 44% say they've had an encounter. From CNN, from August 27th of this year, many Americans say they've interacted with deceased family members in dreams this time. All right, and here, we'll talk about this in a minute. Here's some of the ghost hunting merch.
Yeah, check it out. Scroll down.
Well, we'll get to it. Yeah, you can see. Now, look, folks, because as you can see, this stuff is not cheap.
No, it's not.
It's not cheap.
Most stuff is like $200, $300, $500 even.
Yeah. Here's there's the Flux 2 response device. When we get to the segment on the implements, I'll talk a little bit more about it there because what these devices are actually picking up, they're taking advantage of the public's ignorance, is what they're doing. Look at this, Walmart. Walmart has a ghost hunter's toolkit. They've got it all right there. And I don't know, were you able to look through this? Because what are the cards here?
Well, I didn't look at the cards, but I did see that there's numerous options to choose from in Walmart and also in Amazon.
Maybe it's right here.
Lots of products that you can buy for ghost hunting, kits and crystals and even sage, and all your occult needs can be met at Walmart and at Amazon.
Yeah, here it is. It shows the Walmart description for the products. Use this paranormal toolkit to spark intuitive abilities and link them to scientific research. I had to throw that in there probably. It offers assistance with client interaction, member recruitment, and paranormal research by using 4 22-card decks designed specifically for ghost investigations and paranormal studies. So it is a kind of tarot. It's a divination. They're divination cards, we could say. See how intuition and brainstorming techniques can be used by your team to answer questions that can help solve cases. Get more information from your clients, find the right members for your group, and make EVP, voice phenomenon.
They're just totally trying to normalize it and make it seem very clinical almost even.
Yeah, they said they've got a ghostly version of the Major Arcana Tarot. They're going to give you some tarot as well. And if you're new to the paranormal field, try your hand at starting your own team with this easy-to-follow kit. And right here, also, if you'll notice in the kit, let's go back to the graph.
The dowsing rods.
Look at, they got dowsing rods right there. So you can go out and douse for water or douse for spirits or whatever you do with dowsing rods. There they are. Amazon, same thing. You can find plenty. Here's an EMF sensor. The EMF sensor is called the ghost meter. It's an electromagnetic frequency sensor. It senses whenever there is a change, a fluctuation in the frequencies that are already present in your environment, right? So right now, all of us are, as we sit here, wherever you happen to be, wherever we are, unless you're way off the grid now, there are radio signals around us, Wi-Fi signals, there's stuff all around us. And these things, that's what these things are there to detect. Specifically what these really are, you find electric, my brain.
Frequencies?
In the walls where electricity,
wiring.
Cables, lines, where electricity lines are in the walls. You might use that to find one before you put a nail in the wall or hang sheetrock or whatever. So these are meant to find electromagnetic frequencies, and when it changes, that it puts off a signal. So, I don't think we really need to go into a huge debunking about these things, but here's a spirit box. This looks like it's one of the older versions where it actually uses the radio frequencies. Here's a K2 meter. It's just another LED.
They're the cat balls.
Yeah, it's just another.
you see in the shows.
Right, okay, yeah,
that they use.
The K2 is just another EMF meter, and you can see the strength of the frequency. What's that?
The cat balls are funny.
Yeah, the cat balls. These things, they just light up. Most of them are EMF sensors, and so whenever the frequency changes, they go off, and this is called evidence. There's more too. I don't know. Did we get a REM pod? I think I'm not absolutely sure, but I think the REM pod that you see, I think what it does, it's got the antenna that comes up. I think what it does is it detects changes in temperature. I know that's one of the things that they look for is changes in temperature. So if the temperature fluctuates in the room, you don't know whether high or low, but if the temperature fluctuates within a certain tolerance or range that's been set, the alarm goes off. And that is supposed to be evidence that there's a ghost. Now here's the Ghost Hunter store. This is one of the biggest ones that we found, the Ghost Hunter store. The original paranormal one-stop shop, the largest selection of ghost hunting equipment and supplies, plus religious items and spiritual items. So make no mistake, this is most certainly a spiritual movement.
That looks like a Simon Says.
Yeah, it is basically a Simon. That is a Simon Says. That's all it is. Wow, yeah. So
I know, all this stuff seems really goofy to me, honestly. I mean, I do remember being in like 4th or 5th grade, and my best friend and I, we tried the Ouija board in the basement, and it was terrifying. And we had a really scary experience with it, and like we felt like it moved, and we got terrified and threw it straight in the trash. Never messed with it again.
I wish I was more like you. Look at this. Here's a spirit box. It's on sale. Get your Black Friday deals. $549 here for this. It's just an amplifier. Well, anyway, so a recent Vox article titled "Race to Optimize Grief." This is this article right here. The race to optimize grief. And this article highlights really the materialist urge in Americans, the materialist urge to monetize absolutely everything. It also exposes the truth about our fascination with communicating with the dead. The article covers a trend in tech startup companies taking advantage of artificial intelligence to connect grieving customers with their long-lost, meaning dead, loved ones. They call it grief tech. One of the AI-powered tools offered for communicating with the dead is called the Ghostbot. And that's from, was it Seance AI? I can't remember.
Yeah, Seance AI.
That one's the one that's called the Ghostbot. So we'll get to that in a minute. But the article claims that this could be the end of mourning as we know it. So now, from Fortune magazine, before I get to that article, I just want to share this with you a little bit about the economy of ghost hunting here. We're certainly obsessed with death. There's no question about it. A lady called Annalene Dinkelman, who lives in New York and has a Wall Street walking tour business, and also runs the Wall Street Walks Ghost Tour. Right? She says it's perfect down here on Wall Street because France's Tavern has many ghosts. They've had murders there that have left many ghosts. Right? There's a truth claim. When someone's murdered in a place, it leaves a ghost there. Well, why? How? How do you justify it? Why do you think that's true? We don't really ever get that. But anyway, she says there are several ghosts at the Battery Park area. And of course, the ghosts in the cemetery. It's always assumed that ghosts are in the cemetery. Why would that be assumed? You know, I think maybe when you think about Egyptian culture, ancient Egyptian culture, they had the idea of the Ba and the Ka, these two elements to the soul, to the unseen part that animates the body. One of those, I can't remember which is which, but one of those would go off to be in the heavens, but the other one would stay near the body. And so when we hear stuff like this, you know, that there are spirits hanging around.
Or the idea of purgatory.
Yeah, I mean, that's in there too. So this idea that people can go to graveyards or go near death and somehow that will get you closer to communing with that or communicating with that, the spirit of that person. That's really kind of an ancient pagan idea. You know, we can see that as far back in the Egyptians. I'm not sure about the Assyrians, but we can trace it back to Egypt for sure. So Annalene Dinkelman points out here that that when the market crashed in 1929, you know, desperate men jumped out of the building outside the stock exchange. So she takes people on the walk and points out this is where that happened. So you see the fascination with things that you ought not really be even interested in, but these are our urges. She takes groups over to Trinity Cemetery to admire the location that is haunted not only by President Hamilton, but in the great injustice of the afterlife, also by his killer, Aaron Burr, who's also been known to rock the dinnerware of a nearby restaurant. Mercedes Carrabba has been running the Market Ghost Tour in Seattle for 12 years. Started by her father in the 1980s, and she's taken it further. She claims she's had experiences with the supernatural all her life. Carrabba's company also runs Ghost Alley Espresso, where all the baristas are cross-trained as supernatural tour guides or ghost hunters. She said that once she started giving these ghost tours, they just did it in September and October, and then very soon, within 3 years, they did it 6 months out of the years, and then after 4 years, they had enough business to do it all year long. She says that they use the standard ghost hunting equipment, K2 meters, video recording, photographs, and trigger objects to hunt for the supernatural. Trigger objects are things like stuffed animals and toys.
Annabelle dolls.
Annabelle dolls.
Haunted objects.
Yeah. Estes Park, Colorado.
The Shining.
The Stanley Hotel. Best known as the hotel that inspired Stephen King's and Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, offers a ghost adventure package starting at around $283 a night. You couldn't pay me to sleep in that place.
No, it's creepy. I've been in there. It's really creepy.
I bet. You get a queen room for that. And you get that on the supposedly haunted 4th floor. And they also give you some tools. They give you a K2 meter, a glow-in-the-dark dark Stanley Hotel squishy ghost, and a red rum mug.
It's like toys for kids.
It is. It's perpetual adolescence.
Games. Everybody wants to play.
The website for Myrtle's Plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana, proudly declares that it is one of America's most haunted homes, thanks to the presence of Chloe, who was a slave who was killed on the property. The Hotel del Coronado in Coronado, California, recently published a book documenting its hauntings. Also, the Lizzie Borden house. If you want to, you can pay a fee and go sleep in the house where it is said that this teenage girl murdered her entire family. Does that sound like fun?
No.
Looking for a vacation? Ready to go? Going to make some reservations for that. San Diego's Whaley House, home of the city's first public gallows. That's where they would hang people. They run ghost hunts for $50 per investigator with extra spooky activities. Pennsylvania's Eastern State Penitentiary is also a boon for amateur and professional ghost hunters, and it even has corporate sponsors. Angela Artuso, director of the Gotham Paranormal Research Society, says we don't even charge for our services. Now, here's where this is where it becomes a bit evangelistic or ministerial. They're ministering to people. They believe they're ministering in their own way by not charging. And probably who's going to pay you for that anyway? Not many people would, but some will. But this PRS, this Paranormal Research, Gotham Paranormal Research Society, is made up of teachers, medical personnel, so doctors, nurses, there's an attorney, a police officer, a CPA, an audio specialist, a historian. They have mediums, professional photographers, and a filmmaker, all in this one ghost hunting group. So this is not, these are not the fringes of society. This is the cross section of everyone, and all of them volunteer their time. Artuso said they do it because they love history, they love the paranormal, and they love helping others. And that's the big message here. That's the undercurrent. You'll see everyone believes they're helping others. It says we never charge. We just want to help people make sense of what is happening in their homes or businesses. We just want to find answers and help people feel safe in their homes. A recent survey revealed that 62% would not let a paranormal presence curb their enthusiasm for buying a home, for example. Artuso said, for example, a frightened family with small children may call us and we'll go investigate. And what we consider success is helping the family feel safe, returning a sense of normalcy or comfort. This is still Maya Polsley, who founded the Paranormal Pursuit with her sister Amanda Villegas, said, we want to help the souls that are stuck, but we more want to educate people that most ghosts are not demonic. A lot of times they just want help. So it's not only about helping the people who are the living people who are experiencing things, it's also about helping the spirit who's stuck, right? So this is most certainly a spiritual endeavor. It's very religious. She says also, we don't charge anybody ever for investigations. For Polsley, the dream is a reality show where she and her sister could hunt ghosts and investigate paranormal phenomena in prime time. Right? They have a web series already. She estimates that she has spent so far over $15,000 on equipment to give their web series a professional polish. Now, as we covered a minute ago, Walmart sells a ghost hunting kit designed for intermediate paranormal researchers. Here's the list. It's got a tri-field meter, portable motion sensor, EVP listener, digital local remote thermometer. That must be the That might be the REM pod. And a laser infrared thermometer. And we showed you the other one here at ghosthunterstore.com. So that's a little bit about the economy. Now back to the grief tech. I want to share this from Vox. This is an interesting story. In spring of 2023, a woman named Sunshine Henley texted her mother. She asked, "Where have you gone?" And she told her that she missed her. And soon after received a response from her mother that said, "Honey, I wish I could give you a definite answer, but what I do know is that our bond and our love transcends physical boundaries. In some ways, I'm everywhere. I'm in the memories we shared, the love we had, and the lessons I gave you. I'm in your heart and in your dreams. I'm in every breeze that brushes your face, every beam of sunlight that warms you, and every star that twinkles in the night sky, and maybe in a way that we don't fully understand. We will see each other again." Unquote. Well, isn't that beautiful? That's poetic, right? But is it true? Is it in any way connected to reality?
No.
Thank you. Well, Henley read this message out loud to her husband, and they both began to cry because the mother has been dead for about a year. The entity now texting with Henley was a ghost bot of her mom that was powered by artificial intelligence, specifically ChatGPT. She said, "If I'm having a tough day, it puts great wisdom into one place." So she can go to this app, essentially, and interact with it. It's programmed to give responses similar to what her mother would say. And she says, that's interesting, she says it puts wisdom into one place. Wisdom. Wisdom is what she's seeking, but she doesn't have any idea where to find it. ChatGPT, she said, felt more human to me than this grief therapist she saw. So this is based on something called deep learning, right? The technology. Deep learning is something called, uses something called neural networks, artificial neural networks that are trained to mimic human behavior. It's very important. They're trained to mimic human behavior. They're trained to, and then they're programmed to recreate the essence of the deceased person. This is known as grief tech. Startups like Replica, Hereafter AI, Storyfile, Seance AI are all offering users a range of services to cope with the loss of a loved one. Or you can have interactive video conversations with the dead. The software typically guides users through a personality questionnaire and trains its AI-backed algorithm based on these responses. Jaron Rocks, the founder of a Ghostbot company, Seance AI, clarified that his software is simply meant to provide a sense of closure and not intended as something super long-term. But LA-based Justin Harrison of You Only Virtual proposes that we should never have to say goodbye to those we love. He says that we should reproduce the authentic essence of your loved one, that we should do that. And we should do that because his hope is to eliminate grief as an emotion. Eliminate grief as an emotion. There's a purpose.
That's not good. Suffering, we need to suffer in order
purpose
to
for
grow.
grief. Yeah, in fact, James 1, the first chapter of James is all about how trials and suffering, grief, different kinds of trials, that God uses those to grow us spiritually, to make us stronger. So the very thing this person wants, which is to be free of this
suffering,
this confusion, it is available. It's available. You can be free of it. He's just barking up the wrong tree. So grief tech and ghost bots belong to a larger movement of something called death technopreneurship. Death technopreneurship in the United States. That's kind of an irritating term, isn't it?
Yes.
Technopreneurship.
Well, I just wanted to say that this
Yeah.
is such a zeitgeist of the time. The fact that this grief tech, these Ghostbots, this AI, we also are going to get into how with AI, some have questioned, well, what's coming through the AI is what's going to be influencing the AI. So it's necromancy, right? It's just it's a normalization of necromancy. It's of course we're moving into the technology age deeper and deeper, and of course people are going to adopt new technologies. But we've gotten all this programming from the movies and the television shows and the YouTube channels about this crazy little hodgepodge of what theology is for pop culture, and now we're just putting it on steroids with this new AI tech.
Yeah, it is. It's fertile ground for terrible theology.
And dangerous to your soul.
Yeah, most definitely. Author of the book Death Glitch, How Techno-Solutionism Fails Us in This Life and Beyond, Tamara Neese, says that death is a lucrative business, demonstrated by the long histories of the life insurance, estate planning, and funeral industries. And digital death entrepreneurs are just trying to get their piece of the pie, unquote. So I think that's pretty astute. Now, there's also, it was interesting to find that they're also talking about ethics here. There's a conversation, although it's not out front, in the back rooms, these companies are talking, is this really ethical? Artificial intelligence ethicists and technology researchers find the nascent technology problematic on more than one level. An April 2023 study in Computer Law and Security Review highlights the legal and ethical concerns of grief tech. Number one is the lack of consent of the dead person. Did anybody think about whether or not this person who has deceased really wants anybody to do this with their likeness? So there's a very good point. Would this person have wanted this? And also, number two, the dangers of psychological dependency on grief bots. Now, with what we know about social media and the way it has fragmented and corrupted our society.
This is another level of just disengaging altogether from reality.
And they're taking advantage, right? This is when people are suffering. You said this a minute ago, that it's really taking advantage of people when they're in
the lowest point in their lives, possibly.
When they're in a vulnerable moment. That's what it says here. If you're in pain and grieving, you're probably not trying to figure out the best way to keep your data safe and secure, right? Or whether it's being used properly.
Yeah, so you're also very impressionable, so depending on what that AI program is spitting back at you, maybe you're going to start developing a theology about the afterlife because of this interaction.
Hey, what about this? What if the version of the person that the AI creates or that the person prefers doesn't really even have it's not even really like the person, right? At this, now we're getting into a different area where you're just creating golems and egregores, maybe.
Well, it is. It's like the golem. It is.
Yeah. So I think that
particularly if they're going to be using cyborgs or robotics, that would be a better example of what a golem is. But
that's definitely where it's headed, right?
Yes. Where
you have a real actual, not flesh and blood, but at least a robotic version of the person. So what they say here, that this is really, really, really bad because it reduces our deceased loved ones into a singular essence, it says, that exists in Ghostbots. Basically, what they're saying is that an individual is reduced to a simulation and forever trapped in time, and that this feels both incorrect and potentially morally fraught as well. So this just goes back to the hyperreal. People just desire to be in the hyperreal world, right? Where things are easily controlled, and you can, if you can imagine it, you can do it. But Well, in Sunshine Henley's case, from the beginning of this story, ChatGPT abruptly stopped working its magic for her. So this ghost bot for her, one day in July 2023, she was venting to this ghost bot. She was venting to this character. And instead of giving back a compassionate response that would have been just like her mother, as it had been doing for months, it just gave a very cold list of steps she could follow for a meaningful career, to find a meaningful career. So months after she had built a relationship with this chatbot, that's important, built a relationship with this chatbot, it unexpectedly abandoned her. So there you go. The chatbot is no different than a person, at least in the negative sense. And you'll see this. The AI will tell you when you interact with it, it'll say stuff like, as an AI language model, I don't possess any personal identity or consciousness. I don't have life, memories, or emotions. My purpose is to assist and provide information based on data I've been trained on. That's what it is. That's what it does. This happened also with another one of the companies. Replica users suddenly lost their virtual companions overnight in February of 2023. In March, a man in Belgium took his own life after using the relational bot Eliza to cope with his grief and anxiety. Now, the Christian worldview solves this problem. Christ has defeated death. Death is not, what death is no longer, it's not a mystery to us. It's not something to be feared. In fact, John 3:16 tells us what the promise is: everlasting life, right? So if we're preoccupied with anything, maybe it should be everlasting life rather than death themes and talking to the dead. There's another article over at Singularity Hub that talks a little bit more about this. One component of grief is universal. They say we miss the person who's gone and we wish we could talk to them again and spend time with them. Mindbank AI is working on making that possible. Let's see if I can get this guy's name. Well, he says, when you lose someone, you have moments where you want to look through photos or videos of them in a bittersweet way. That's his Emil Jimenez, the company's founder. He said, now you can have those moments, but you can have a conversation with the person too. These are called digital twins. And they replicate personalities of the deceased. They replicate their ways of thinking and speaking and other characteristics as closely as possible. And they'll interact with then these twins will interact with our loved ones after we're gone and teach us about ourselves. So this is the idea where maybe I wanted to create one of myself so that you could have it after I was gone. And I hope you wouldn't want one of those, would you?
No. Because that's just, for me, as a Christian, I don't want to do that at all.
I noticed the hesitation, though, because the urge, the instinct in us is to want to keep the one we love around forever. But, that's not
it's not biblical.
That's not a good instinct.
It's not biblical.
Right. You think about, I forget what it was. It was some little animated movie about a little boy whose dog dies, and he figures out a way to bring his dog back. But he brings the dog back, and the dog's not quite right. It's not quite the same.
Yeah, there's a lot of movies like that.
Yeah, and it just keeps happening, and it just becomes sad because you just, you realize this is not good. This is not a good way to think. Yeah. So anyway, digital twins. He says, I like to call it AI enhanced humanity. Right. Well, you keep hoping. He says AI is just another tool that's going to change our culture, he said. That might be true. Okay, so just to make it clear here about artificial intelligence and all this, it's not thinking, it can't think, and we've spent months now since ChatGPT came out, and it's almost a year now since it came out. And trying to understand what artificial intelligence is. What is it? What is it really? What is there anything there to be afraid of? Well, it's technology, and we don't have any reason for us to fear technology. Tony Reinke, theologian who wrote one of the books we share here with you a lot, he writes on technology. He's a Christian theologian who writes about technology a lot. He said, technology used by a heart of flesh is technology used by a heart of stone. Faithful use of technology is belief. That's to be acting in belief. Rebellious use of technology is to be acting in unbelief. So there is a theology of how we use technology, and you can follow that very easily with the concept of the love of money, or think of it as mammon, right? We don't love and devote ourselves to our technology. I think we'll talk about that some more in just a minute, but I don't know if I want to go into it. The artificial intelligence, it's basically it's math. Math is a language. It is a language. But language and human communication is a lot more than math. All that artificial intelligence can do at this point is predict the most likely response that should be given based on the language model that it possesses, that it's the data bank that it's working from. And they get very good at it, but they're not thinking. To create convincing digital twins, MindBank will have to take things a step further. They say, rather than a fixed set of rules its algorithms would use to respond to questions and interact with others, the model would ideally evolve over time. And this is with a technology called transformer technology, which it's trying to take it up a notch, where it's not so much just probabilities as it is trying to reason. It's never going to be alive. So let's just get that out of the way. Right? It needs to be more. For it to be lifelike, it needs to be more than just reflecting back patterns. Human beings are dynamic creatures. We're not always predictable. At least to one another, we're not. Right? You think that you can get the essence of a person by filling out a questionnaire. Even filling out a questionnaire every day for 10 years, you think you can really get the essence of a person. But the truth is, human beings, our personalities, we're like icebergs. There's a part that people see, and then there's a whole lot more underneath the surface that people never see. Humans are complex creatures, constantly being influenced by our environment and interactions. And MindBank is aiming to capture all of that. He said, we want the ups and the downs. We don't want just the good stuff. We want all of it. He also says that this is useful for helping you to know yourself better. It's like Google Analytics for your mind. What it really means, right, is there's a creepiness factor here, right? You've got to really think about this. Would it be healthy to continue talking to a loved one after they're deceased? Are there nefarious uses for these digital twins that bad actors could take advantage of? And social media has done, as we've talked about here before, and fragmenting the consciousness even of young people, and has made people more self-absorbed and less authentic. What would this do? If you could have a bot that was just like you, or just like someone, it probably would be more like us, right? Because we're idolatrous, and we want to create other versions of ourselves. He says people want to help people get through hard times. It's part of coming to grips with what happened and moving on. This will be another tool that can help us get past that stage. Well, do I want to know more about myself? Do I want to explore myself and find out all I can about me? Jeremiah 17:9 says the heart is not, it's It's not a wellspring of good stuff. And we covered this when we did our video. There's an old video on the channel here about transcendental meditation, the meditation industry, and about how it's psychologically destructive. All you can see that this is doing is making people more self-absorbed.
And again, it's necromancy. We're not supposed to do it.
Right. It's making it very easy for people to create idols out of their family members. Yes. Ancestor idols.
Mm-hmm.
So they keep saying that what we want to do is provide relief. We want to prevent people from getting bogged down in sorrow and being unable to let go. But it could be the opposite effect, right? You could create it a circumstance where someone just becomes completely addicted and just cannot leave it alone. But I think what's more important, what we hear being said here, is that the difference between secular grief and grief as a Christian. Secular grief is managed in stages, right? As we always talk about the stages of grief.
Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
Right. So the stages, and you need to work through the stages. Sometimes you come back into
denial, anger, acceptance.
Now this is helpful because it is a pattern that we tend to be in. But biblical grief or trials are meant for our good. Romans 8:28. Meant for our good. Struggling and trials are meant for our good. Another question here is, what about these digital twins? What about these personalities? Could a digital twin remain on a board of directors after the real person has passed away? Could they be given rights? Well, they all claim that the goal is to create an authentic essence of a loved one so that you never have to say goodbye. People have reported finding comfort in these ghost bots, but does it really help people? Does it help people to be able to believe anyway that they're still connected to a person after they're gone? The people running these companies and people using the products would say, yes, it's a beautiful thing. But what did Jesus say about honoring or even thinking about the dead? Stay tuned. We'll get to that in a minute. Well, while we've got some more video for you right here in just a second. While mimicking conversational style is just one of the many uses for AI, there's a niche yet growing market here that we can see for these large language models to take advantage of people even more. Now, let's move to the Vice news report. Well, let's see. Before we do that, I want to play this clip here from the Incarnate documentary. This is a documentary done about the Annabelle doll that's in the Paranormal Museum of Ed and Lorraine Warren, and it's not their grandson, but
he dated their daughter.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I think they've called him kind of like a grandson before, but Tony Spera is who we'll be hearing from here. All I got out of. Just a second, I've got to find my. We have to come back to
cursor.
It. Yeah, I got out of whack. It's okay. We'll do the Vice News article before this. But I lost my Vice News article. There's Bill Johnson. Everybody's ready for a dose of Bill Johnson, right?
Grave soaking. Grave soaking.
Here it is. Here's the Vice article. Yeah, we'll do that.
That's the Vice video.
Vice video. Okay, here we go. So in this Vice video, this is Anastasia Sin. That's her name, Anastasia Sin. I think it's S-Y-N-N, but you know what she's up to there, right? Let's listen to this because you're going to hear her say some things like, until someone comes down to tell me there's an afterlife, well, I don't know what to do. And I want you to pay attention to the normalization of necromancy, right? It's going to talk about her having his ashes implanted under her skin. She said she will do anything to keep him alive. Is that love? I'm asking. I didn't plan that. I'm just thinking right now, Summer. Is that love? to go to that extent, right? I want to have your ashes implanted under my skin. I want to be able.
It reveals that she has a deep insecurity about never seeing him again.
I just want to point out to everybody listening, we didn't plan this moment, but I want you to understand that's what insight sounds like. That's what true insight and self-awareness sounds like, right? It doesn't sound like, well, just, whatever makes her feel good. If it makes her feel better, then it's got to be. No, that's what you just said there is like, can you repeat it?
You have a deep insecurity that you'll never see him again because your worldview and what you believe is so unstable and it's such a hodgepodge. And I mean, you're basically revealing that your worldview is very shaky, that you have to control it. You have to create your reality. So of course you're going to get the tattoo, put the ashes, embed them in the body, because you're grasping for anything that you can to try to hold on.
We want to be in control. We really are afraid of not being in control. But the idea that anybody's in control of anything is the first illusion, right? That's the idea that you're actually in control of anything here.
Yeah, and that's of course very sad.
Yeah, it is. And that's what you'll see this in this report here. I'm going to have to try to play it in small clips because Vice, I don't want to deal with copyright stuff if we can avoid it. But anyway, pay attention to this here. That the fact that she really seems to be just sort of devastated and having a hard time dealing with this loss in her life. And I think Summer's exactly right. This comes back down to a deficiency or a fear and a spiritual vulnerability and spiritual gullibility within her that makes her apt to be confused about the world she's living in. And that's everybody. She's not unique, right? This is most people out there. As Christians, we need to understand the suffering of people like this so we know how to find that gospel on-ramp, right? Because if you could show this person how she doesn't have to be confused, help her become aware of her true condition in the world and the truth about the unseen realm. Well, the Lord would be faithful, to open her eyes. So let's listen to a little bit of this. Also, you'll hear from Justin Harrison, the founder of You Only Virtual. We've already talked about here a little bit. He talks about being terrified of losing people. That's more of what Summer just said. It indicates a strong insecurity. It's the wrong worldview. It's an incomplete worldview that doesn't answer all the questions. He also says we found a workaround for death. He also says, too, that death is the worst part of life and we must overcome it. So there's some transhumanism, too. So let's start.
Put your fingers in.
Does it hurt? Who are you talking to?
Okay, fair enough. All right.
This is Anastasia Sin. You might have seen her on TV as a magician or stunt performer. She's also a self-proclaimed cyborg and an advocate for biohacking.
All right, self-proclaimed cyborg and an advocate for body hacking. I would say that just to keep this chopped up a little bit here, this is what I would call disordered ambition. We've played around with that phrase, that term here a lot this year, and that's really just sort of the idea of a kind of lust inside all of us for when our hearts are not fixed upon the highest eternal good, right? My heart is fixed on making me feel better and feel complete and unconfused right now, but my heart is not at all fixed on the highest and eternal good. Disordered ambition. Disordered ambition explains a lot. That term, I believe, explains a lot. And it also has to do with those who would like to separate us from our true identity as image bearers of God.
She moved to Southern California after her husband passed away last year. His name was Jonathan Zealous, and he was a fixture on comedy and late-night TV.
Now we've got a guy named Jonathan who is absolutely amazing, and you'll never guess what he calls himself. The Amazing Jonathan!
Hi, I'm the Amazing Jonathan, and I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict, and, wait a minute, what night is this? Oh shit, wrong place.
Jonathan, the human, he was never off. He was cracking jokes, constantly messing with people. Every time we...
stop it here. Amazing Jonathan was a character that it's pretty clear now looking back on to see that was one of those who, just like his wife or his partner here, is dealing with a lot of internal insecurities, and we often use humor to help us cope with that. And he was a funny guy, but I want to get to the part here where they have a recording of his voice for her.
Well, check out that curtain. Just show the curtain. There it is.
Yeah, over the kitchen sink.
My life when he was gone.
Her latest technology pursuit is bringing her husband back digitally.
I don't know, until someone comes down and tells me that there's an afterlife, I just have a hard time believing it. So this AI is the closest thing I'm going to get to being able.
Somebody comes down and tells her there's an afterlife. Until that happens, she can't believe it. And see, now there you go, Christian. There's your opportunity. You ever hear someone say that? Well, someone has come down, and someone has settled all of it. Someone has defeated death for you.
Talk to me again.
AI products are popping up all over the place. We've mostly seen it used to generate artwork and do college essays, but the applications for this stuff are rapidly expanding. So it was probably inevitable that someone would use AI to test the boundaries of life itself. And that is where Justin Harrison comes in.
All right, so this is Justin Harrison. This is the founder of You Only Virtual. He's the one who did the voice of, he collected Jonathan's questions and personality traits and all.
They want to collect your versona, as he calls it.
Your versona.
Virtual persona, versona.
Well, let's listen to a couple, let's listen to a little bit from Jonathan here, what he says.
Just before she died of cancer.
I realized what I'm terrified of losing is the relationship between her and I. I'm terrified of losing how my mom is to me and having that one person in my life that I constantly rely on.
That is an idol.
Mm-hmm.
This poor gentleman has turned his mother into an idol, and it's bringing out the worst parts of himself, right? To try to create this, right? We have to overcome death. Death is the worst part of life. We need a workaround for death. I'm terrified of losing the people I love. Mm-hmm. That's a disordered ambition.
So I became really obsessed with the idea of like figuring out relationship dynamics and recreating those digitally.
Concerts and movies have been using technology to bring back famous people for our entertainment for years now. It's getting more convincing and more commonplace.
You were successful, and I'm successful, and I'm wondering, are you happy?
But
so you can see here as well this urge to be in control of everything, to be in control of all areas of my life. Can you see where what we do something here called the internal critique. We push the antithesis. If this was the way everybody did things, what would the world look like? If this was available and you could create these perfect Ghostbots or these perfect renditions of your loved ones, or not just your loved ones, but perfect renditions of a perfect human being you want to interact with, can you see that what this would do for personal interactions? Like, human beings wouldn't talk to each other anymore because you can't control another human being. But you can see here there's a desire to control death. There's a desire to control what we see and hear and to be able to keep people in our lives forever.
The idea of bringing our own dead loved ones back is a little too Black Mirror for most people's comfort. Last year, Amazon unveiled new technology that allows your Alexa device to speak to you in the voice of, say, your grandma.
Alexa, can Grandma finish reading me The Wizard of Oz?
Okay, but how about my courage? Asked the lion anxiously.
And with enough funding and resources, the possibilities are even more uncanny. A South Korean production company released a documentary where a grieving mother was reunited with a digital version of her daughter using virtual reality.
엄마 나연이 보고 싶었어.
So there you go.
Yeah, this whole segment right here, it strikes me as so seductive and enticing, and it's literally just like the devil's just whispering to you, trying to make it as attractive as possible. This scene right here with the little girl and her mother.
Yeah, it's heart-wrenching, dealing with losing a child, and this is not your child. But you can see people will consume it.
Clear as this, and all you have on is those glasses, but I'm still right here, and we're having the same level of conversation, the same interaction. I think eventually we'll reach a point where it'll be hard for you to distinguish whether or not I'm actually gone for you.
And you think that's a good thing?
I think it's a great thing.
Ta-da! And the door opens.
She's got everything. She's even got the chip in her hand.
It's great for him because he's terrified of losing his mother, so it works out for him in the end.
Works out for him, and that's the point. As long as it works out for me, for what I want.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that awesome? Everyone needs these. Everybody needs one.
So today's the day.
Yeah. I'm nervous because I want it to seem as real as possible, but I'm also nervous because what if it seems as real as possible? I'm worried about my emotional state,
So should we let's
there you go. There's the insight into her.
She's like, I'm worried about my emotional state, and he's like, well, yeah, let's just get going.
Just dive right in. Yeah. Let's just go ahead and do it. I mean, I came all this way, and we've got a camera crew. We can't be worried about your emotional state right now. We got to press on. But look at her body language. The lips are pressed together. She's nervous about what's going to happen here. They're going to play back some audio for her. She's going to try to interact with the digital version of her dead husband.
Let's see how this has turned out.
Okay.
Go for it, yeah.
Hey.
So I sent you an email that has the first voice memo actually that you've ever sent, period.
There's an 8-second message in his voice right now in my email?
Yes.
I want to hear it.
I love your sense of humor, and I miss the way you used to snort when you laugh. I love your eyes, and I miss the way your nostrils flare when you're mad at me.
It almost sounded like his voice, like a weird, demented version of his voice.
How about that? It almost sounded like his voice.
Did she say a weird Tibetan version?
A weird demented.
Okay.
A weird demented version of his voice. I think she's trying to be nice here because I think this was extremely underwhelming, what was produced here. But
that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first step. Yeah, you want to chat with him?
Yeah, let's go for it. I'm an emotional mess. Let's take it even further. Hey, beep, beep. How are things where you are?
It says, I'm good at this house.
Have you had any good meals lately? This is so accurate because he would so often ignore what I asked him and then ask me his own question. And I'm like,
oh my God, thank God you're telling us this. There's so many things
right.
What the hell?
He would say that. I love you too. And I miss you. And I would love it if you would text me every day. Can you do something to make me laugh? That's probably the thing that I miss the most. Share the joke.
Ooh,
okay,
that just burns.
Yeah, I mean,
he says your stupidity.
Share the joke.
Yeah, what are you laughing at? And from her dead husband, it's your stupidity. And I know she tries to play it off as though, oh, that's something he would say.
Right, but in a way, it's kind of like, they're wagging their finger like, ha ha ha.
Yeah.
You're so gullible.
Yeah, that's what it ends up looking like. So there you go, man. That's all it is. I mean, that's pretty underwhelming, and people have putting a lot of faith in this. Let's hear what she's got. A couple more comments here.
We were stupid that way.
I hope you're happy with this as a first step.
I am. I'm pretty impressed. I am. I can't wait to see how it develops further. Thank you.
How was that?
At times emotional, and at times, I think I was hoping for it to be more engaging. I mean, there were times he was engaging and times he wasn't, but the voice memo really made up for it.
Yeah,
it was comforting.
Was it comforting?
It was comforting hearing a voice that sounded similar to Jonathan's. It was comforting, but also emotional, because it makes me sad because he's not here. It was comforting. She says as she breaks down crying in the middle of a sentence.
That's exactly the point, right? Are you really comforted? Is she really comforted? Is this really good for her? Is this a healthy thing for her? Is she processing what's going on in her world well right here? And that's pretty sad, right?
Yeah, it's very sad.
To see that this is there and it can take advantage of people so easily. As far as this artificial intelligence, people may ask, what can it actually do? It can answer questions. It can provide detailed answers. It can scan its knowledge base, which is everything available on the internet, and give you very good can write essays for you, bring back explanations and information on just about anything it has access to. It can do language tasks like translation. It can summarize articles for you. It can generate text. It can do creative writing. It can assist in creative writing. It can make up stories. It can write stories, original stories. It's already written, seen it where it writes music. And pretty soon it'll be writing movies, scripts, and create characters. It can help, of course, with learning, educational content, tutoring, problem solving. You can have conversations with them. You just have to, be aware that you're not getting any sort of actual interaction. You're just watching math. It can also do coding and technical help for programming, but that's about it. It can't think. It can't consider your emotions and take what you're saying and provide you a thoughtful, heartfelt response. It can only choose from a data bank of responses and bring the one that's most likely the best one for you. So here's Tony Spera, the guy we talked about a minute ago. And he, at the 29-minute mark, this is just, I'm not going to play this because it's really just about this haunted doll that's in the Paranormal Museum there in New England, somewhere in New England. Do you remember where it was? Ed and Lorraine Warren, I forget where they were.
Like Connecticut or something.
That's where they're from. Yeah, it's Connecticut, you're right. Yeah, it is, you're right, it's Connecticut.
Yeah.
I just don't know where in Connecticut. We were watching Grim Life Collective where they went to the grave.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. Well, okay, so let's check this out. He's going to explain the purpose and really the worldview of all of this. I thought this was pretty interesting.
Dangerous object here. When Ed passed in 2006, Lorraine, of course, was still alive, and she said, well, we're going to keep everything going, right, Tone? And I said, yeah, we're going to keep the New England Society's name alive, and we're going to keep doing what you guys have already done.
Okay, so that just to break it up here for the sake of the algorithm. Ed and Lorraine Warren, famous demonologists. Ed was a demonologist, and Lorraine Warren was she was the psychic medium, and they were doing this in the 50s. And so this Tony Spera was a young man when he met them, and they just sort of took him on, and now he has their museum.
Always done is try to help people. So our society, the New England Society for Psychic Research, I took over as director. We carry on the traditions and the work of Ed and Lorraine Warren. We try to get to the core of what happened, and then we try to help the people. Now, how do you do that? How do you do that?
All right, there you go. They're there to help people. Now he's going to explain how do we do that? How do we actually help people? I'm sorry about the audio being low here. There's nothing really I can do about that. It's just recorded low.
It could be through a blessing of the house. It could be through instructions of the family what to do, like what kind of prayers to say, maybe walking through the house with blessed pontifical incense, getting a priest to come in and bless the house and the people, and also maybe getting, if possible, if needed, an exorcism of the house or of the people, which is the expelling of devils and demons. What this museum actually means to me is over 50 years of hard investigative work by Ed and Lorraine Warren, the pioneers of the paranormal. They were the pioneers.
So 50 years of investigative work, and what are the fruits? What are the fruits of that 50 years of labor?
A doll locked in a box.
They've got a doll locked in a box. Right? And that doll torments people, apparently, and they've got a lot of haunted objects there. That's, you heard that the goal of what they're doing, he said, was to help people. And how we help people is we may bless the house. We may bring in some pontifical incense, some blessed incense. We may bring in some holy water. We may do, and this is.
And we might actually even use the name of Jesus to cast the spirits out.
This is what the preacher says in Ecclesiastes. This is striving at wind. This is just striving at the wind. This is just working hard, so hard, and nothing to show for it. let's get a word from some psychics. Right. This video is how to talk to the dead according to the psychics. Well, first of all, what is a psychic? Let's hear from them what they believe they are.
So when I think of the word psychic, I think of the people who are in Times Square trying to flag you down.
I prefer the word seer. I prefer intuitive counselor.
You can be clairvoyant, you can be clairaudient, clairsentient, a medium. There's so many different types of being psychic. You can just be kind of sensitive in the sense that you are an empath and you can pick up on other people's energies.
You can be sensitive that you're an empath. Did you ever hear that, Summer? Did anyone ever tell you that?
Yes.
I heard it too. It's funny, isn't it? It's pretty common for someone in the movement.
Yeah, that's just standard thought about how we are. Some people are empathic and others are more.
That's how you do cold reading.
Narcissistic.
Right.
It's like the narcissists versus the empaths.
Yeah, that's kind of, when you do cold reading on people, that's just what most of these psychics, these so-called psychics do. Well, that a lot of people in the world, especially today, are struggling or have struggled at some point recently. Everyone deals with struggling. So when someone comes in and they say they're struggling, it's you say to them, but don't you understand? The reason you struggle is because you're very sensitive. You have this wonderful trait where you're very sensitive. In fact, you're empathic, and that's evidence that you're special. You're very special. You have something unique that no one else has.
Flattery.
Yes.
Flattery.
So unfortunately, there are predatory people in this industry.
I have a huge issue with some of the storefront psychics that are neon signs because a lot of them, they definitely prey on really weak individuals.
I was a victim of scamming.
Okay, so that's the point. They prey on very weak individuals. So if you're taken advantage of by a psychic, in their worldview, it's because you're a very weak individual. Not because you're trusting, but you're a weak individual. All right, so let me jump ahead here. Now, what about talking to the dead? How do they... okay, by the way, thanks. Summer. Tony Spera is the director of the New England Society for Psychic Research. So that's...
And he was, in fact, the son-in-law of the famed demonologist.
Son-in-law, so they
Lorraine
did.
Warren,
so they got married.
Yeah.
They got married.
Yes.
Okay. So son-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Spera, director of the New England Society for Psychic Research. Thank you to the research department.
Not Connecticut, but maybe they were in Connecticut for the interview. I'm not sure.
They lived there in the 50s.
Yeah.
Thank you to our research department, which is Summer.
I've spent thousands.
Oh, wait a minute here. We go to 228. Now, talking to the dead, what do they say about being a medium?
My experience in talking with the dead is rewarding. It's unique. And it's powerful, and I think it helps to give closure.
Weird stuff can happen sometimes. So sitting across the table from this client, basically a demon face comes at me, and I actually had to ask this client to leave and give them a refund because I couldn't.
This October, I was doing a reading for a girl that sat down, and we had these trees that were part of the setup for the psychic fair, and these trees had little lights connected to them. As I was doing the mediumship reading, the trees started flashing. But it was only 2 trees out of 7 trees. And I knew that it was a message because she was literally sitting right in front of these 2 trees. She was like, yeah, my dad named me, and my name in Hebrew means tree. And they stopped flashing once we acknowledged it.
So these are loose connections, right? It's a lot of cold reading.
And that's so deceitful too, because the first woman is gonna act like, oh, I saw a demon's face, so I right away I stopped the session. And are you kidding me? Is that really an honest statement?
That's because she's doing white magic. So you're saying what you're saying is that did
she
was
really
saying
that she encountered a demonic force, and she decided to stop the session because that was going too far to encounter a demonic force.
She doesn't do darkness.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the confusion.
Well, that's the confusion. It's the utter confusion, because if you are experiencing some sort of entity, that's going to be a demonic force.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the spirit of your loved one.
Exactly. So if this person shows up in front of you, you're the psychic, you're the medium, you're the one that's advertising, you got your shingle on the wall out there that you're the one that's going to help people deal with problems of the world.
That's all you're ever dealing with is demonic forces.
Right. So when she looked at the person, it's like, I just can't help you because this is too far. That's your job. That's what you said you do. You're there to help people, but I don't want to help these people who have demons.
Right.
Meanwhile, everyone in the room is possessed.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, so back to Dallin Spratt, a guy who we don't think is possessed. In fact, Dallin professes that he's a Christian, and I believe he said it, that he's, did he say he was Methodist?
I don't remember him saying Methodist, but I mean,
chances are Methodist or Episcopal.
His theology, though, is not somebody who's reading the Bible.
Right. So, this is probably about 80% of Christianity, based on other data that we have. Probably 80% of Christians in America think this way.
Yeah,
they don't have any grasp.
It's New Age.
Yeah.
It's like a New Age Christianity.
Another way to say it, I think, would be this is an example of the common Western pseudo-spiritual worldview. It's something like that. So let's see. We jump ahead to this point right here. All right. Seeking revelation from the darkness. Is that smart? Let's listen to this.
We're going to look into that. And something else I'm curious about. When spirits say that they're stuck, I was always taught that in religion, in the Bible, like when you die, everybody just pretty much is waiting until the rapture comes, right? Like you ain't nobody in heaven and hell until Judgment Day, and Judgment Day isn't until the rapture. If I'm wrong, forgive me. That's just what I've always thought. So then, what are people? What's going on? Like, are everybody just kind of waiting? What do you think? What do y'all think? So if that's the case, are some people just? I'm thinking as I'm talking, y'all. I'm thinking as I'm talking. If a spirit says that they're stuck, and based on the Christian religion, if there's the rapture, what we're waiting for, maybe these are people who didn't follow the Christian religion, and so I don't know, because then maybe I'm trying to make everybody a Christian, y'all. I don't know. I don't know, y'all.
Well, here's the question. That's a good question. Those are good questions. Don't they deserve a real answer?
And the problem is he's going to start asking his spirit box to answer those questions.
Yes, that's what happens. And this coming from a professing Christian who we love, who would love the opportunity to talk to. I'm not sure he would like what we'd have to say, because we'd have to tell him, you've got to get out of the graveyard. You've got to leave the dead alone. That's not who you think you're talking to is not who you think it is. If you're getting responses and things are happening that are legitimate, it's coming from the demonic. It's not coming from dead people or these families who are buried together. It's the darkness. It's the dark side. And if we are Christians, if we love God, then we want to know what he said about these things, which we'll get to that in a minute. So, let's a couple more minutes here.
I don't know. I'm just going based off of...
I guess people want to know, he asked the question, what happens when we die? That's really the question, right? Well, the most orthodox Christian answer to that question is when a believer dies, he passes into the presence of the Lord. Not bodily yet, but in spirit, is immediately with the Lord. That's what the scriptures tell us. As for those who are not in Christ at death, one perspective is that they are asleep. They're unconscious for now. And then the judgment. And then the judgment. And that he was speaking about the rapture and all this. So then at that point, then the judgment. Which at that point there would be the resurrection of the living and the resurrection of the dead, resurrection of the living to a glorified body, perfected body, in a new heaven and a new earth, and the judgment of the wicked in a body, physical body, into eternal conscious torment. The Bible says that it's flames. I believe Jesus. So he goes on here.
My black ass has been taught in the church. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But this is what I've been told, y'all. You wait for it, the rapture, then you're judged. So if that's the case, people that are stuck, do they not know that they're supposed to be waiting to be judged? But if that's the case, is there not somebody else who's waiting to tell them, hey, chill out, bro, you're not stuck, you're just in a waiting line?
So what's missing here? What's missing from all this? Why does anyone need a savior?
His whole channel is about contacting the other side. He couldn't bother to do some serious study.
No, and I think that's what a lot of paranormal channels and researchers are about. They're not about finding information. They're not about actually getting to the truth. They're about interpretation. Interpretation of the clouds, interpretation of the smells, interpretation of the temperature in the room, right? It's all extremely subjective, and that's what Dallin is dealing with here, a very subjective view of the spiritual, of the unseen realm. And we would pray for Dallin, that the Lord would impress upon his heart the danger that he is in daily in this. So it continues on.
What y'all think? What y'all think? I'm thinking out loud, y'all. I'm talking out loud. Marie Elena Carroll. Thank you so much, love. Thank you.
Got
what do y'all
donation.
think? And for my people that aren't Christians, what do y'all think? I use the Sono X10 Spirit Box app. SONO, the letter X, the number 10, Spirit Box app. Y'all, I'm not trying to put my Christian beliefs on nobody, because if you don't believe that, hey, that's on you, man. Look, everybody, I ain't got no heaven and no hell to put nobody in. So I'm curious to your perception. What do you think happens with?
And so that was where one ended up there. I'm not trying to put my Christian beliefs on anybody. Brother, that's exactly what you need to be doing, especially with all these people who are coming to your channel and they're asking you about the afterlife. You're a Christian.
The Great Commission.
There you go. You've got a captive audience. Now, Summer shared this book with me. This is
Bringers of the
Bringers
Dawn.
of the Dawn, Barbara Marciniak. Teachings from the Pleiadians. And the reason I wanted to bring this up for you today is because the preface of this book is highly instructive. So she starts out where she's trapped in Bali. She's trying to get to Australia for a conference, and she's running into obstacles. So she starts talking about, she talks about her childhood, about how she felt isolated. She endured different kinds of trauma as a child. She said, in childhood, I felt I was different. I felt I was marked to stand out. And one reason she believes this is because she said, I inherited an older brother who was mentally retarded. This book was written in the 90s when that term was.
It was written in 1992.
Yeah, so that term, it's interesting to read that, But he says, I was impulsed by the Pleiadians, as I have affectionately come to call them, the P's, she says, to re-examine old photos from childhood and reconsider my interpretation of who I thought I was. So she's hearing from something, and she says that they explain that they are Pleiadians, from the star cluster of the Pleiades, the seven sisters, these seven stars. She says, our family shared and explored its boundaries under the influence of my Polish maternal grandmother, Babsi, who embodied a dignity and a pride that transcended her earthly experience. Basically, what she describes here as her grandmother, Babsi, was a bit of an occultist. Exodus 20, verse 5, and Exodus 18:20, the effects of sin are not always obvious. Right? Sometimes these sin can look like a lot of different things that isn't immediately obvious to us. She talks about those Polish teachings from her grandmother, teachings of loving the earth that would later be echoed through the voice of my own star connection, the Pleiadians. Her name, Babsi, meant star. That's what that was about. She says, in my teens, I became excited with the discovery that there were many interpretations of reality from which to choose. There you go. By the 1970s, I was exploring the Seth material. So I don't know, Summer, do you know what that is? Is that Egyptian
The Seth material.
mythology. Yeah.
I knew about it at one point, but I'm not sure at this point.
Well, she says, I absorbed page upon page of Seth lore. In August of 1987, the summer of harmonic convergence. Now that's a big thing in the New Age community. The summer of harmonic convergence. This is when we were supposed to have come into contact with ethereal entities. It's made up, but it's something that a lot of people agree on. She says, in March of 1988, 7 months later, I began experiencing brief reality collapses. This sounds a lot like David Icke explaining the way he was enlightened.
Right, but keep in mind it was 1992.
Yeah. She says, my body was catapulted into a state of shock. My body was activated beyond anything I had ever experienced. Exactly what David Icke experienced. Exposing truth that was always very difficult to assimilate she felt empowered to do. Moved to Taos, New Mexico in the early 80s, where she had a late night encounter in her bedroom with 3 bright blue beings. She said she panicked. An unexplained slice of reality that certainly wasn't a dream. Under what category should I file all this? Was it really real? Every cell in my body suddenly knew extraterrestrials were real. My body would never forget the meeting of the 3 blue beings and how they hovered over me, calming me from some apparent yet camouflaged trauma, which would open for me what was to come, which is this relationship with the Pleiadians. The Pleiadians and I officially intersected realities in Athens, Greece on May 18th, 1988. I'd been touring through the temple of sites of Egypt and Greece. We moved through the ancient vortexes of these places, enthralled by the mystery stored within the silent stones. But she said something impulsed me with the notion to begin to channel. So she takes her mind back to the king's chamber in the Great Pyramid and decides to go to her room and channel, open herself up. So she said, I intended to become a clear channel now. So that's what she did. She stated it. She said, I am available. This is her first channeling experience. The unknown announced its presence as the Pleiadians. The energies had been distinct and abundant, and somehow I had been thrust into a rather blissful union of contact, feelings of wisdom and peace. What inner turmoil my following all these impulses led to. Right? She goes on to say that this caused so much inner turmoil. She says, I've since learned to trust and honor these energies that move me. During the first month of our relationship, the Pleiadians, suggested that I begin to study astrology, properly access universal language and the code of purpose, which is what they say astrology is. So our meeting and merging took practice to bring about greater ease, trust, and understanding. She exhibited no doubts, but for myself, she's talking about her sister Karen, this was very easy for her, but for herself, she says, I kept wondering if this was really real. So her sister encouraged her to go deeper into the delusion. I conditionally offered the use of my body and my voice at appointed times. It took me a good 2 years to make a deep bond with the Pleiadians, and it came about during a body therapy session where a wave of Pleiadian love like no other engulfed me. They valued me, and I surrendered, letting go as they created a life of their own through me. Today, we live in fine accord, and truly I feel more extraterrestrial than human. Not that I claim to fully comprehend these encounters. This is my version of the illusion. A precious gift, the grace returned. Interesting. So Barbara explains here a life where she experienced trauma and felt like she was outcast or not like everyone else. She was lonely and lost as a child. And then she sort of idealizes her brother's condition, his mental illness, and describes him sort of like an angel that foreshadowed her future special existence. And so the Pleiadians, assuming that she's having a real encounter, this would be the demonic, she said, seem to represent a savior for her. Not just a savior, but a protector, and gave her life meaning and purpose. But not only for her, because they announced that they've come here now to help us out of the muck, out of this, this Kali Yuga, right? This period of dark age that we're in. So there's, this is the worldview, the mindset that makes these beliefs kind of take hold. It's interesting. I'm not going to play much of this. I don't think we have time right now. But Bill Johnson at Bethel Church, they do this too. They talk about it's grave soaking that they do. And in this video, they're responding to the charges that it's pagan. They're just going to deny that they do it.
Well, they've got the School of Supernatural Ministry.
Yeah, and so because that's going to be a good point here, where he starts talking about learning to risk so that you can fully encounter God.
Our backgrounds are different. Like you were raised charismatic, and long family history of unusual supernatural experiences and the power of God hitting you guys in various ways. I was raised non-charismatic, was a little bit kind of interested, wanted everything that's in Scripture, but I remember I didn't speak in tongues until years later, till I was in my late 20s, and I told the Lord many times, like, I'm ready, set, go, anytime, ready now. And but as I look back, I was so worried about doing it wrong, and I thought I had to have this pristine holiness, or it had to be this pristine, perfectly spiritual moment, and just kept me from risking. So a lot of what our journey has been on is like learning to risk, to enjoy the presence of the Lord. Have you found that risk is a part of that?
Absolutely. You have to just, we want to be right. You never want to be in error. I love
being right.
Yeah, but I mean, we don't want to be in error. Yeah. We don't want to.
So there you go. You want to be right. You don't want to be in error, and there is a way that you can absolutely know whether or not you're in error or not. Anyway.
Be deceived. I mean, those are always concerns, but it's almost like I'm required. It's almost like I have to be willing to fail to succeed.
Yeah.
And it's a huge part of our culture. So we don't always get it right. So then we clean up the mess.
I have to be very careful with this because they are very litigious on there when you use their videos.
By the way, apparently the Seth audio collection, that was done in the 1970s. And it was supposed to be a channeling session that was happening in the 1970s. And it was all about, trying to reach your human potential, the validity of the eternal soul, and the concept that we create our reality according to our beliefs. So all of this, that's what she was referring to.
Essential New Age doctrine, yeah.
Yeah.
And channeling.
Interesting. So, Lucifer comes as the angel of light, right?
Right. Becomes disguised as an angel of light. He's not going to show up to you looking grotesque and turn you off. He's going to seduce you, turn you on. All right, a couple more minutes.
But it's like Chris does this well. He presents.
Pay close attention to what he says. He's going to describe the way the faith and the way being a Christian or being a church is kind of like a corporation with a research and development department and a marketing department.
The two sides of a company, Apple Computers, for example, research and development and manufacturing. Well, your values in those two worlds are completely different. Manufacturing, you want zero defects.
Every product works perfectly. It looks just like the other.
We don't want to recall. We don't have to, But on research and development, if zero defect is your primary value, you won't invent anything.
So if perfection is the goal, you won't be able to invent anything. I had some notes on that because that is a fascinating and revealing statement when you think about it. What has Bill Johnson just said? What has he admitted there? He's admitted that what we do, like in our church, there is a research and development side where we go take risks. In other words, they go engage in heresy. They push the faith as far as they can and actually beyond. And so he's telling you his idea of the church. Because what they've done is they've invented new ways to experience God. In fact, they haven't invented any such thing. They've just created other ways, just like these folks who are contacting the dead. It's no different. They're just creating experiences. Bill Johnson himself said in Invading Babylon, I believe his book, Invading Babylon, or one of his books, that we owe people an encounter with God. Well, what about that pressure? What if I can't give them an encounter with God? What then? Is it my fault? What? So you can see this is kind of the same.
Well, then you're going to just,
mindset.
Create the glory cloud and spray it from the ceiling.
Make people believe that there is, that there's some supernatural presence that's not there. So, would you talk to the dead if you could? Maybe interrogate the spirit of Adolf Hitler? Would you ask JFK what really happened in Dallas? Most people say they want to talk to Einstein or Shakespeare, Da Vinci, Joan of Arc, Jane Austen, or Jesus. But isn't that interesting? People tell you who would you, famous person from history would you like to talk to? One of those names that people always give is very much alive and available for communion right now. Matthew 28:6. When the women run to the tomb and the angel is standing there waiting and says, Jesus is not here, for he has risen just as he said he would. So when a man can predict his death and predict his resurrection and pull it off, that is someone that you should listen to. I don't mean if someone can make you believe they've done it. I mean when someone can do that. The resurrection of Christ is a historical event. It's in history. It's a fact of history. Now, people argue about what may or may not have happened, but the fact that everyone there was convinced that it had happened is not in question. But Jesus Christ is alive in a body, the same body he had here, glorified now, and forever he will be in this glorified state. And when we are brought back to be with him, we'll see him as he is, and we will be as he is in that glorified body, in the sense of the glorified body. But if you believed it was possible, would you want to talk with a deceased loved one? The West has experienced this boom of interest in paranormal phenomena. Since the 1990s, beliefs in channeling and communicating with the dead have increased. And we've talked about the statistics. I won't go through those anymore tonight. It's just a lot of influence. Pew Research Center found that 53% of people report interacting with deceased loved ones. It goes up in some cases as high as 63 or 70%. Among Catholics and Black Protestants, almost 2/3 of the people polled reported having contact, with a deceased relative, is specifically what we're talking about here. 70% of Americans believe it's possible to feel the presence of someone who has died if they're there around you. Over half of Americans believe that the living can be helped by the dead. And almost 50% say that they can communicate with the dead in some way. We see this in TV, literature, pop culture. Stranger Things was the most watched show in 2022. Netflix has tons of shows about this. I'll name a few of them. 28 Days Haunted, Kindred Spirits, Expedition Entity, reality shows like Help My House is Haunted, documentary style shows like Shock Docs, Michigan Hell House on the Travel Channel, The Devil's Academy, and The Haunted Hunts on Amazon Prime. In 1959, The Twilight Zone appeared and ran for 6 seasons, and exploring all kinds of supernatural and metaphysical themes. From 1998 to 2006, the young adult TV show Charmed featured witches who regularly communicated with the dead. And then the hit show Supernatural, which premiered in 2005, ran for 16 years. Still on, I think. No, I don't know if it's off or not, but it started in 2005 and ran for 16 years. So I think it stopped in 2020. Dealing with necromancy, communicating with the spirits. So darkness is openly celebrated in primetime as well, with the juggernaut television show American Horror Story, which premiered in 2011, and that one is still in production. Darkness has always been a significant influence in Hollywood, with too many titles to name that push the paranormal. But, for example, films like The Sixth Sense, a young boy who can see dead people, communicate with them. That was 1999. 1990 was the film Ghost, Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze, a romantic fantasy thriller involving communication with the deceased lover. 2001, The Others, a film that deals with the presence of spirits in a haunted house. And who can forget Beetlejuice, 1988. Dark comedy where a newly dead family of 3, mother, father, and a daughter. Winona Ryder plays the daughter. That's Gina Davis is the mother, and one of the Baldwins is it Alec Baldwin? One of the Baldwins is the husband. And so they've just died in a car accident, and they're haunting their old home. And, you know, a new family moves in, and so they summon this mischievous spirit called Beetlejuice to help them scare the new tenants away. Also, young adult and teen literature has been a massive moneymaker and a tremendous influence on at least 2 generations now. The Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling, various forms of necromancy, teaches children to seek the hidden power from within. Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders, a novel set in a supernatural world with themes of the afterlife. Twilight series, Twilight book series and films as well. Teen Wolf. Lots and lots of things.
Vampire Diaries.
Yeah, and they're aimed at young people, you know. The Lovely Bones, an Alice Sebold novel, is narrated by a teenage girl who's been murdered and watches over her family from the afterlife, which is also another big idea that when our loved ones who we really care about, you know, die, well, I just know they're here watching over us. You hear that a lot. Mm-hmm. He's definitely here watching over us right now. Well, none of this is new. All right, Shakespeare, his thematic use of ghosts, communication with the dead, witchcraft, and supernatural apparitions in Hamlet and Macbeth. But you might think of that differently. The way Shakespeare used these themes is different from the way they're used in films today, or young teen literature and films, or young adult literature. For Shakespeare, the occult was a vehicle. The occult was a tool, an element of a greater narrative to tell, a tool to tell the tale. But for much of the films and the young adult literature we see today, the occult themes and seeking power from the darkness, that is the story. It's not just a tool, that is the point. But in the Bible, when God's people experience visions or dreams, it's almost always followed by a direct revelation from God or an interpretation from an angel who clearly identifies himself. Or they're told the meaning is to come later, right? Daniel, seal up the book until the proper time. But in the paranormal, no one is ever given clear, unambiguous instructions from talking to the dead. Like the practice of transcendental meditation, the turmoil it causes is rarely reported because that's bad for business. People would say, I'm not a medium. I'm a Christian. I believe God gives me these visions and dreams. Well, the Bible makes it clear that we should avoid mediums, should avoid anyone who's making contact or attempting to make contact with the dead. Avoid mediums, avoid psychics, avoid sorcerers. This is Deuteronomy 18. Have nothing to do with them. And when we think about the young people that that the literature and a lot of these TV shows and streaming shows are intended for, do we think that most of the teens today, do they possess the kind of discernment necessary to overcome the emotional and to realize that they're being duped? It's not likely. Anything not clearly originating from God must be questioned and handled very carefully. Seeking supernatural knowledge was what caused the fall of mankind in Genesis 3. Have we all forgotten? Yes, I guess many of us have forgotten. That was the point. That's what caused the fall. The knowledge of good and evil, supernatural knowledge. Now, you'll notice that while God is mentioned a lot, and in these movements, they're appealing to the name or to the word God or some being they call God. But the name of Jesus Christ is usually absent unless it's a person claiming to be blessing a home or someone who claims to be casting out a demon in the name of Jesus. But all claims of encounters with God or the supernatural must be met with loving and careful discernment. All right. Many people say things like, I think Christians are just shortchanging God. It's like they want to keep God in this little box, How can anyone say that God can't give me these gifts? How can anyone say God can't gift anyone in any way he chooses? He's God, isn't he? I believe God has lots of gifts to give his kids, but maybe some of us are too busy to notice to say things like that. But do you ever read in Scripture where anyone ever failed to notice that a dream or vision they were having was genuinely from God? Is anyone ever confused about that? The only prophet that we know of that was confused about whether or not his revelation was from a demon or an angel was the prophet Muhammad. He wasn't sure whether he was being possessed or whether he was being given divine revelation. That tells you a lot about Islam. But the prophets in the Old Testament were often hesitant, and being a prophet almost always got them killed by their own people. But they never, ever doubted the origin of the messages that they delivered. These tales are constructed to be seductive for a target audience. What young adult or teenager doesn't want to believe that he or she is entirely unique and spiritually special, getting messages from God? This is why something like contemplative prayer, also called spiritual formation, and divination tools and all of these paranormal tools that they use, this is why they're becoming so popular today. The spiritually immature believer may think that contacting the dead or summoning an encounter with magic entities to have a stimulating supernatural experience and to enter altered states of consciousness through meditation or psychedelics brings a person to a true experience with spirits or God. But the enemy uses these urges of ours. The enemy uses our desire to control circumstances against us, and uses them against us for the purpose of deceiving us. It was in the 1800s when spiritualism was popularized in America. And it had a significant cultural impact with things like seances, obviously, communication with the dead, necromancy we call it. And in the 20th century, the rise of the New Age movement brought a massive popularization of Eastern religion, philosophy, and metaphysics, embracing a wide range of spiritual and metaphysical practices, of which necromancy, or communicating or manipulating the dead, is an integral part. We've seen celebrity psychics like Sylvia Browne and John Edward in the 80s and 90s, who became massively popular and successful through the genre of daytime talk television for their parlor tricks involving what they said was receiving information from dead loved ones for audience members who happened to be there, right? Their goal was to bring messages from the dead and bring them to the living. And right on through to today, TV shows like Ghost Hunters continue to popularize the idea of communicating with spirits. Necromancy is everywhere, especially on social media. Thousands of YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Odyssey, Rumble, BitChute channels, and hundreds of thousands of social media accounts creating this bottomless pit of dark supernatural intrigue. Massive public square platforms like YouTube allow individuals worldwide with nothing more than a camera and their curiosity to post content right alongside production companies with million-dollar budgets. and then share it with the global audience. Ghost hunting videos, paranormal research teams, esoteric training systems, psychics, astrologers, apostles, prophets, grave soakers, and a wide-eyed mass of mostly youthful consumers eager to put it all into practice. The shows usually consist of ghost hunting, paranormal research, of course, but mainly it's communicating with the dead, which has become almost a standard or a staple of the genre. It wasn't always like this. In the not too distant past, seeking experiences and counsel from the dead was considered odd, even twisted, certainly sinful. However, occult themes have now been welcomed into the culture and even encouraged within the church. The recent fascination with the Enneagram is one such symptom you can point to. Just look at what Bethel's up to. Those are the biggest examples. The growth of this genre into a movement indicates a breakdown in the spiritual epistemology of Americans, or generally people in the West. It's the abandonment of critical thinking in public schools, the reviling of Christian tradition, and the American exodus from the church over the last 20 years that has created a moral and spiritual vacuum. And in that vacuum, conjurers and con men are welcomed by the open-minded masses, and where occult themes have been encouraged even within the church. So we no longer adhere to valid categories and definitions when we evaluate evidence and interactions with the unseen realm. In other words, today anything goes. In fact, the ability to construct and attach a convincing narrative to this utterly subjective experience is a common trait of those who are successful in ghost hunting shows. It's about the story. But Christianity is an exercise in discernment. We love God with all our hearts, and we love God with all our mind, and we're supposed to employ the faculties of our intellect to discern truth from error. And that standard of truth and error is found in the fully sufficient, infallible Word of God. So this is these are strongholds. We wanted to make sure that you come away from this understanding what a stronghold is. The church at Corinth struggled with many matters just like this. The church at Corinth was not dissimilar from our own cultural struggles. So the Apostle Paul writes to the Christians at Corinth, and by application to us, 2 Corinthians 10, where he says, "For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God for pulling down strongholds." In the next verse, Paul helps us to understand what strongholds are. We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, and take every thought captive to obey Christ. So when the Apostle Paul is teaching Corinthian Christians about spiritual warfare and about pulling down strongholds, what he is saying is that we, Christians, we must win the war for the mind with others, and we have to win the war for the mind in our own right too. And that's the way we do that is by feeding on the bread of life. We feed on God's word. So to win the war for the mind, because that's where the strongholds occur, win the war for the mind and overcome rebellion in ourselves, and that's our goal with others. Specifically, and by application to all of us, what Paul is saying is that strongholds specifically are ideas or desires that overshadow God's truth, or ideas or desires that send us in a direction that is send us away from Scripture, or ideas and desires that are just counter to what God has said. It's something that overshadows God's truth in our own hearts and our own minds and in the culture. Collectively, in the culture, a stronghold is a plausibility structure. It's a trend, an idea, or a custom that through its popularization, society has accepted it And that's the only reason they accepted it, is because it's popular. It just gets more and more popular. More people accept it because if everybody's doing it, it must be okay. And that's a deadly philosophy. So the weapons of our spiritual warfare to bring down spiritual strongholds are described in Ephesians 6 as the full armor of God. And Paul uses the imagery that every person in the first century Roman Empire would understand. It's the gear and outfitting of a Roman soldier. It's the belt of truth, the breastplate of righteousness, the shield of faith that stops the flaming arrows of Satan, the helmet of salvation, shoes buckled and tied, which symbolizes our readiness to live out the gospel of peace, and the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. Ephesians 6, 10 through 20, or specifically here, Ephesians 6, 14 through 17. So only once we are outfitted through and through with the light of truth can we begin to expose darkness and take down strongholds. But the most important element and our most effective witness in the world is our steadfastness, our patient faith in waiting on and relying on God's divine power and not our own. Well, I asked the question earlier, what did Jesus say about death? In Matthew 8:18, and also verses 21 and 22. It says, when Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side of the lake. Another disciple said to him, Lord, first let me go and bury my father. But Jesus told him, follow me and let the dead bury their own dead. First of all, the ideas and beliefs and customs around death in the culture of first century Roman Empire, and specifically in the region we call the Middle East today, are very different from ours. So we need to approach the text faithfully and carefully by considering its context and the author's intent. Second of all, the Bible is not about you. The Bible is about Jesus. In John 5:39, Jesus tells the religious leaders, the scriptures testify about me. So when we go to the biblical text, we need to be seeking Jesus, to learn more of Jesus, to grow closer to Jesus, to be more like Jesus, and to glorify his name. What the man is saying to Jesus here, let me go bury my father, and then I'll come follow you. What he's really saying is, I'll follow you after I go see to my father's needs. I'm not sure how long that's going to take, but when I'm finished with all that, then I'll come back and follow you. So it's likely that the man, given the context here of what's going on, he probably had an inheritance to claim from his father. He was very likely saying to Jesus, let me just go and ensure my financial future. Let me make sure all this is set. And once I got all that secured, then I'll come back and follow you. So the application here has much more to do with keeping our priorities straight rather than making a commentary about death. The man had more important things to do than to follow the Lord of glory. The man's priorities were out of whack, and Jesus used this opportunity to teach. Although the man didn't seem to get the message, those around him did or could have. And by extension and application here, a couple millennia later, we are taught by that encounter. This man also presumptuously assumed. This is a really important part that I want you to think about. He presumed in this text, he presumed that he had all the time he needed to do whatever he thought was most important. Now, this is just as common today for us to think like this, to put things off. But putting off Jesus means that you probably don't know Jesus at all. Isaiah 55, 6 and 7. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he's near. Let the wicked forsake his way. How about that last part? Let the wicked forsake his way. Let me forsake my own way. Let me forsake this fascination with hearing from the dead. And you need to have a sense of urgency about all of this. The message today has been we have to take evil seriously, and we need to have a sense of urgency about our evangelism in this world. Don't assume that you're going to have another chance, because that day might never come. 1 John 2, do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, The love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and the pride of life, is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world is passing away, along with its desires. But whoever does the will of God abides forever. So let the dead bury their own means to let those who have no desire to follow Jesus, those who are spiritually dead, be consumed with the cares of the world and this life. Jesus was revealing to this man the true condition of his heart. And Jesus instilled a sense of urgency in his reply to this man. Therefore, we know that our lives and our ministries should be infused with a sense of solemnity for the severity of God's wrath which is to come on those who aren't in Christ. And we should also have this sense of urgency as we seek to reach as many as possible with the gospel. The point is this: don't hold on to the dead. Let the dead go. There's a more urgent task at hand. Ask yourself, have you grown complacent, believing there's plenty of time? Are you asking Jesus to wait while you do the things you believe are more important? Joe Boot said it this way: it's no surprise that the modern Western world has seen this rise of magic, witchcraft, and occultism as the means of the true source of power, and the revival of Satanism, power from below, as an article of faith and hope. In the post-Darwinian world, faith in Satan seems much more logical than faith in Jesus Christ. The worldview of witchcraft seeks knowledge of correlations and correspondences rooted in a basic and original unity of everything, or nature. The unified theory, right? That's what all the philosophers were seeking, so that man could find his autonomous power, the unity and all-sufficiency of the self. Contrasts and distinctions, separations and divisions keep the world in a place of struggle and conflict. Only when this oppositional reality ends, the world's agitation is over and multiplicity is reabsorbed into the one of Plotinus, or the Brahman, or the Atman, or Nirvana. When existence ceases, then alone can there be peace, they say. Good and evil, right and wrong, truth and falsehood are all oppositional concepts that enslave man and society in conflict, they say. Man must be reabsorbed into divinity, into the pure unity. That's how we find rest, they say. But for that to take place, the manliness of man must be undone. Now, we mean specifically the masculinity of man must be gone. Biblical multiplicity and distinctions must be eroded as illusions and man's idealized unity asserted at every point. In other words, the image of God must be defaced. The image of God must be obfuscated, obscured in everyone. In ancient magical arts, this was done through the orgy. It was done through cannibalism, through demon invocation, and through general perversion. Today, the means are a little more sophisticated, but still perverted, while many of the others are still practiced. But for the Christian faith, the creation and government of all things is of God, and His power and wisdom have created and have defined and always govern all things. And God's power and wisdom and His government transcends man, transcends mankind's history. It even transcends the universe. It is this that modern witchcraft is concerned to deny. This idea that God is the creator must be destroyed because man has to be creator, right? Just as much as the magi of ancient Persia and the philosophers of Greece or India believed. The philosophers of Greece, of course, and India were heavily influenced by the ancient magi of ancient Persia. So if we're to understand the radical changes in our society today, if we want to engage with this and actually gospel people, people who are inspired by principalities, diabolical principalities, and manifest in ideological strongholds that set themselves up against the knowledge of God. If we're going to come against it, then we have to grasp the essential instrumentality of modern life as engaged, wittingly or not, in witchcraft. The goal of modern civil government has long ceased to be focused on the administration of justice. It's increasingly about the creation of a cosmic man who is divine, to join what God has separated and create a unified, distinction-free community that represents the end of all struggle. It's ultimately the first Christian heresy, has been the longest lasting and the one that's still with us, Gnosticism, the power of hidden knowledge. The purpose of such manipulation is power to control and transform in terms of a revived religious image of humanity. Our culture, our current culture, is bent on defacing the image of God by denying that man is man and woman is woman, by negating the God-given nature of marriage, and by politically manipulating people to believe and act as though an illusion were true, as though the voice coming through the spirit box is a real person. They want us to believe that, in fact, homosexuality is normative. They want us to believe that gender is fluid and that androgyny is the human ideal. We're all evolving. We're ascending to this state of androgyny they would like for you to believe. One researcher noted homosexuality and cross-gender sexuality are embedded in witchcraft ritual. Magic as a spiritual path is one filled with transgenderism. A magician of any sort must fluidly shift shapes between genders. Knowledge of both masculine and feminine aspects of oneself is the reason, quote, why gays, lesbians, bisexuals, and transgendered people were recognized as potentially talented in the mystical arts, unquote. So the radical cultural confusion and irrationality of our time with regard to gender, marriage, sexuality, and spirituality, specifically here with occultism and witchcraft, it's not an accident, it's not incidental, but it's basic to the revival of the worldview of witchcraft that we see all around us today. What is the problem with that? Occultism is corrosive for every aspect of life and society. Each person in occultism, you're taught, each person seeks their own path, their own way, their own spiritual ascent by their own paths and falls headlong into their own abyss. Of course, the pseudo-scientific manipulations don't end there. Right now, and for many years, great effort has been put into embryonic research and reproductive technologies, the goal of which is knowledge for the purposes of manipulation and creation of a new man. Many strains of witchcraft in times past abhorred pregnancy. They didn't want to have to carry these babies, and so they would abort the fetus, and then the fetus would be cut up and eaten by members of the coven or members of the order. In our own time, we have the mass slaughter of unborn babies on a scale well beyond that imagined in earlier societies. No one is more brutal and murderous than us. We have also widespread promiscuity. We have today in America people who hate reproduction, and we have the sale of babies' body parts, right, by government-funded organizations like Planned Parenthood on a black market for all manner of research. These practices all stem from the worldview not of science, but these practices stem from the worldview of witchcraft. An autonomous realm of knowledge is sought for the acquisition of lawless power so that man might become a god. Social sorcery is all around us. The modern Simon Magus believes, Simon Magus being the father of Gnosticism, the modern Simon Magus, believes that he has solved the riddle of existence, like Pythagoras of old, and that he has changed the universe into what he wanted it to be, which is the abolition of good and evil and the fusion of opposites. We've talked about this a few times here. Summer has reported where Chisholm at the forgot the name of the institution. The institution in the UK. Oh, Summer's not here. Anyway, Chisholm believed that we needed to get rid of the ideas of good and evil from psychology. Right. He gained a supra-rational power, right? That's the goal, is to get this supra-rational power, a vantage point where mankind usurps the right of deciding the real and unreal, being and non-being, and we're just creative forces like gods, creating our own realities. How that works when everyone's creating their own reality, no one has yet described. But this is where our society is today. This is where we've arrived. On such a basis, politicians, judges, and cultural elites make their rulings on marriage and sexuality, and then they publish their curricula. Like the father of Gnosticism, Simon Magus, they are poisoned by bitterness and bound by iniquity, Acts 8:23, even though they walk in ignorance. In the face of all this sophisticated occult power, the Christian, here's your advice. In the face of all that we see around us, sophisticated occult power, artificial intelligence now playing its role in it, with everything we see happening in the world, we have nothing to fear. But we cannot flinch. We cannot falter. We cannot profess to be a Christian when we're in the graveyard doing spirit box sessions, okay? Autonomous knowledge and power are disintegrating because they are satanic illusions. Satan can lie, deceive, manipulate, steal, kill, and destroy, but he can do nothing constructive. Satan can do nothing constructive. So when anyone speaks into the darkness or expects to get revelations from the dead, understand, all they're going to get ever is destructive information, destructive advice. It will never be constructive. Satan cannot remake man. He cannot remake the world. And his path is one only of death, not of life. So when we see people that are obsessed with death, then they are most likely oppressed or in some way romancing the darkness. And so the worldview of witchcraft, though it has been resuscitated for a season, has no more of a future than it had when Simon Peter confronted Simon Magus with the gospel of power, which was God's power. The world is God's creation and moves only in terms of his will and purpose. His word cannot be broken, and no one can stay his hand. In Jesus Christ are hid all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge, and he is both the power and the wisdom of God. Colossians 2:3. Jesus Christ instructed his disciples to wait in Jerusalem, telling them, "You will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come on you, and you will be my witnesses." Acts 1:8. This is the only source of true, unifying, integrating power, the Holy Spirit. And the gospel still has the power to change the world. Romans 1:16 and 17. The gospel is the power of God unto salvation for all of those who believe, to the Jew first and also the Greek. The gospel is the power because it carries with it the regenerating power of the Holy Spirit. We're given this unshakable assurance that whatever the machinations of darkness may be, as Romans 16:20 says, the God of peace will soon crush Satan under your feet. And that's the story. And that's the end of the story. We win. And while we're here, we need to love these people well, evangelize them carefully but specifically, understand where their suffering is, and learn to find that gospel on-ramp. See how they suffer and bring them the healing balm of God's word. Folks, if you would, please take a moment to like this video, share it, leave a comment, if you would, engage with the video some way. That helps us out a lot. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. It's free, and it really does help us. So if you'd like to support us in what we're doing, here's some things you can do. Download the Armor of Truth mobile app. It's 100% free, and you're going to get live notifications, direct links whenever and wherever we go live, exclusive content, articles, reports, and resources, extra podcast material, and Bible studies. If you can support Armor of Truth financially, every single donation of any amount makes a difference, and we're grateful for all of it. You can use the Armor of Truth mobile app Give tab, or you can visit our website, armoroftruth.net/donate, or you can follow the links under the description to this video. Set up a recurring monthly donation to help us plan for the future of Armor of Truth. So what are you waiting for, folks? What are you waiting for? If you haven't done it yet, download the Armor of Truth mobile app now. My name is Brad, and I'm joined by my talented and precious and tired wife, Summer. And together, we're Armor of Truth, and we're seeking a worldview revolution through God's revelation.
Faith is resistance.
Indeed. Indeed it is. God bless you, my friends. We'll see you again next time.
This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test.